Time for the Q&A segment sponsored by Last Era Brand Motorsports Clothing, vintage racing inspired apparel to celebrate and represent the 80s and 90s era of motorsports from Group B, Le Mans, IMSA, Indy, and Formula One. Follow them on Instagram at Last Era Brand or go shopping at lasterabrand.com. Tell them the Hard Parking Podcast sent you. Let's see what we have in our Q&A this week. This question comes from the last time. It's by D-U-R-I-N, UB Druin. Sorry if I messed that up. Opinions on Honda dropping the Civic SI Coupe and the Honda Fit. He said Honda Fit Type R. I really couldn't find anything about the Honda Fit Type R. I did a little bit of research, and I do know that there's some financial reasons why they're dropping both of those. The reason why most cars drop, or most car manufacturers drop cars, is because sales are low. To me, it makes sense. They're going to keep the Civic SI sedan and get rid of the coupe, because the coupe is sort of competition to the Type R. And you don't want to have two things that are so close to where instead of spending $45,000 for the Type R, how much is the Civic Type R? I don't know. Last time I saw it was $45,000. I don't know if that was with the markup or not. Or you could spend $15,000 to $20,000 less for the Civic SI. It makes more sense to get rid of the SI Coupe and keep the Type R. Brian Sales asks, how have you grown personally, or how have your views changed about life, society, and people in 2020? So 2020 has been tough for a lot of people. I think it's been good as long as you're healthy. I think early on, one thing that it really did was allow us to kind of sit back and watch on how people really were. Everything from the great toilet paper crisis, because remember, that was this year. This has been a really long year. But the toilet paper crisis, people trying to sell stuff for just ridiculous amounts of money when other people really needed it. And then take social media. Twitter, Facebook. People had more time to sit around, compose their thoughts, and just say whatever they felt like saying. And it was terrible. There's a lot of things. I don't know. I think it allowed us to see who people really were, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of us, we know people from two things. We know them from hobby and we know them from work. That's really all we know about people. And most people don't talk about their personal lives at work very much. And when you're at a hobby location, like for instance, cars, right? You're at a car meet, all you're doing is talking about your cars. You're not talking about life unless you personally know someone really well. You're not talking about, hey, what's your idea? What do you think about using hydrogen as a possible fossil fuel? Not fossil fuel. What do you think about using hydrogen as a renewable energy for our electric bill? I don't know if that's a real thing, but no one talks about that stuff. And so when you get people sitting behind the keyboard, you get to find out what they really think about politics, what they really think about social issues. And you have to be careful not to judge people too much. You have to be careful not to judge people too much, because all people typically know is through their own experiences, what they've seen through the lens of their own life. And that doesn't always necessarily make them wrong. It just makes them with a different opinion than you. Maybe in many cases, a less informed opinion, or in other cases, maybe you have a less informed opinion that you think you really have about something that actually matters more to somebody else. So for me personally, it's kind of making me, I don't know, I get more bitter as each week passes because I haven't worked in 4 months. As a contractor, we were the first hit. And it's not like I can just go out and get some regular job, because if I get a regular job, I'll be incredibly underemployed, because I know as soon as my field opens up, I'm gone. So it makes it really difficult. I've become a little more bitter. And because of everything that I said earlier, I'm just kind of looking back at people kind of like, man, I thought I knew you sort of, but I really don't know you. But now I know how you really think. And I don't know. I've distanced myself from some people, and then some people have distanced themselves from me. It has given us a lot of time to just kind of sit around and think about our lives and do different things, I guess. That was a really long answer. I didn't want to take that long an answer. Kenny asks, what's the first international trip you'd like to go to when it's safe to travel again? I don't know, Kenny. It's not like I go all over the world normally. I mean, if I leave the country, it's typically because we have a family vacation or my wife and I are going on a nice trip somewhere. And some other friends of ours are trying to get us to go to Amsterdam with them. So maybe we go to Amsterdam. Maybe that's the next vacation. But that usually, in those cases, it had nothing to do with 2020 and the things that we're having to deal with COVID and travel restrictions. It's more or less time, money, availability. Those are really the three things that stop anybody from traveling abroad who's not doing it for work. It's just, for this year, travel's been killed for most people. Possum Killer asks, Futurama or Family Guy? I really like this question because I'm a big fan of both. Haven't watched Family Guy in years. Haven't watched Futurama in years because it was taken off the air. Futurama, I'm going to go ahead and go with Futurama for this reason. Futurama, I think, is one of the most underrated, made for regular television, animated series ever. The same people who made The Simpsons. Somehow The Simpsons lasted forever, and they just never progressed. Futurama, to me, because my wife and I used to watch it, it's more of like the adult version of The Simpsons. And I don't mean adult as in like just pure content, but humor. The humor level they used in Futurama was way ahead of its time.
You want die like last men visit Amazonia?
What'd they die of?
Crushed pelvises.
Yes!
Oh, thank you, Lord in heaven.
It, to use a phrase in football, it outpunted the coverage, it outkicked the coverage. Because you have all these cute characters, all the main characters, so little kids are going to want to watch it, except for they didn't understand the show. The show was really made for adults.
Computer sentences them to death by Snoo Snoo.
Yeah!
What are you, gay?
And I think that, I don't know. To me, Futurama. I'm going to take Futurama over Family Guy for that reason. I think it was cleverly written. Family Guy is also cleverly written, but anybody can get behind Family Guy. Although little kids aren't going to get the jokes either. So John Chu asks, why is the USA a standout loser in the world pandemic response game? A quarter of the global infection. As you guys know, I don't like talking about politics, so I'm going to try to make this as non-political as possible. I don't like talking about a lot of this stuff because it's literally everywhere. Everybody has an opinion, and it's okay to have an opinion. And I know in the last episode about people buying stuff or crying about things they were never going to buy to begin with or can't even afford. Your opinion doesn't matter because it doesn't, but everyone still has an opinion. I think my opinion on this is shared by many. The reason why we're behind is because Americans are stubborn. We're one of the youngest countries historically in the world, yet we act like we've been around forever and we know everything because America's so much better than everywhere else. And it is a lot better than a lot of places. And we do have the Constitution, so we have a lot of stuff going for us. But I also feel that parts of the Constitution are the worst parts about this country, and they need to be rewritten. Parts of it needs to be re-amended. Everybody wants to hide behind their constitutional rights instead of just doing what you're asked. And no, we're not the sheep. It's not, this whole thing isn't for the government to control us. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. One of the most ridiculous things. We're like this but they left it up to each state to decide, each governor to decide how they wanted to proceed because the rates are different. Unlike most countries that are one big thing, we have a very unique thing in the United States being one country broken up into 50 territories, states, if you will, that are typically ran by themselves in their own way within the guidelines of the federal government. And so Arizona, our governor says, open up. And what do we do when we open up? Everybody rushes in crowds. They don't take their time. Everybody packs. All the events that people come out here for, Salt River Tubing, Old Town Scottsdale, packed just as bad, if not worse than before. And that's why people get this illness. That's a big reason. It's not every reason, but that's a big reason. And Americans overall are like, we're going to do what we want to do. There's still a fight whether or not you should or shouldn't wear masks. Bottom line, if they say wear a mask, or you can get fined, then wear a mask. No one's above wearing a mask. You make yourself look stupid. You make yourself look like, oh, you know something that nobody else knows. And then you want to say it's against your constitutional rights to be told what to do. Get out of here. That's why. I have friends in other countries. We talk often because of podcasting. They don't have the issues we have. You know why? Because they say wear a mask. They say practice social distancing. And that's what people did. Wear a mask, practice social distancing, flatten the curve. So we, the people, are the reason why we continue to fail while the rest of the world laughs. It's not the Maine administration's fault. We hold ourselves accountable. And everybody's looking for somebody else to blame. It's our fault. Dub's talking $5,000 to $10,000 here. I reached out to him and asked him to be a little more specific on this, and those are the guidelines he gave me. This is going to be an arbitrary answer. You know, first off, how do you define sports car? I know he's looking at maybe getting a Nissan 350D, or no, actually he's looking at getting a Honda Civic or a Subi. Those are great starter cars. I don't know if you can really call a Honda Civic a sports car, even a Civic SI, but it is a sporty car, especially if you get the coupe. And I don't think, I mean, for $5,000, $5,000 to $10,000, there's probably a ton of Subis out there, a little older you can get. They're safe. Most of them are 4 doors. Most of them all-wheel drive. If you want to get one with a manual transmission, I'm sure they're out there. I don't know much about them. I just know everybody has one. And that should tell you something. That means they're a great car. Maybe get a Subaru BRZ or an FRS. A good used one. I think everybody needs a starter car, though. So don't get anything too nice. And you can find stuff older in that price range is still pretty nice. But you're going to dent it up. You're going to mess it up. We all do. We all screw up our first car somehow, some way. Remember, I spilled battery acid in the backseat of my first car, and that shit just kept growing and growing and growing. And then I didn't have a car for 2 years. Then I got a brand new car. Sport Compact. RJ asked, I want to know how awesome it was to have your car at SEMA. It's a personal goal of mine to get my car there. RJ, good question. I urge you to go back and listen to, let me look this up real quick. So we covered this on this podcast way back in one of the early episodes. And I apologize, I meant to have this ready. So RJ, go back and listen to Season 1, Episode 3, titled, Do You Want Sponsorships for Your Build? In this one, I talk about my SEMA experience, 2017, and what it took to get there. Susan asks, how did you wind up in Michigan from Texas? Because she never asked me this. So Susan Tableman used to be my service advisor when I had my first Acura. So when I bought my 1998 brand new Acura Integra GSR, Susan was there. She was also there when I bought my brand new 1999 Acura Integra GSR a few months after I totaled my 98. Susan is the service advisor every service advisor should aspire to be. And I'm going to have her on the show at some point. She's an awesome woman. So I got spoiled. I got spoiled when I bought my first Acura brand new car because an Acura Integra was an entry-level Acura, no matter what trim you got. And the Type R wasn't available. The Type R was available. Didn't know anything about it. Wasn't interested in a car that didn't have air conditioning. And it cost a few $1,000s more than I could afford anyway, because I wanted a Prelude at the time and couldn't afford those. They cost a little bit more. They were like $22,000, and I think the Integra GSR started. The GSR was like $21,000 or $20,000 or something like that. I went to school. Susan and I went to school. Went to college. Went to Kendall College of Art and Design. 5 years after I graduated high school. So basically that year, 99, for art. That's how I ended up in Michigan. Flunked out of school because I just wasn't feeling it anymore. You know what's bad when you go to school for something that you chose to go to was like a science class? I took night classes, so I thought it'd be easier. Evening classes, and you just never show up. It's like, okay, I can sit around all day and go to class at 6 p.m. or go to class from 6 to 9. I ended up not showing up to so many classes and just missed too much classes, and there's nothing I could do to make up the work. Flunked out. You end up going back to school, getting a degree. Dre Day asks, Tyson or Roy Jones in November? This is such a weird boxing match. But you have to go Tyson. If Tyson can knock, just like old school Tyson, you know, you give him a few minutes, and if he doesn't get the job done in a few minutes, maybe he wears down. I know it's been so long since we've seen him fight. I guess Roy Jones is still fighting, which is interesting because I remember him being washed up 15 years ago. So, but I'm going to have to put my money on Tyson. I think everybody's going to put their money on Tyson just because it's Tyson. It's too bad it's come down to this. That's terrible. And that's your Q&A segment. The Hard Parking Podcast, a little bit of cars and so much more, available wherever you typically download your podcasts.